everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on Facebook, as well as the Carving It Up YouTube channel and the Grid Network YouTube channel. As always, I'm Bryson Carver. Great to be with you on this Monday, a little earlier than usual. Well, listen, we have not been as on schedule as usual. A lot of different conflicts. I was in Florida last week. Now I'm back. It's Christmas season. Got other other commitments for sure. We got a loaded show on tap for you guys tonight because at the end of the day, I got to say this was a. How do I put this? It was kind of a horrible weekend for me. It really was. It was not a great way to kick off the bulk of the holiday season with my Vols getting clobbered by Ohio State in the playoff game. Talk about that. Not necessarily the Tennessee side of it, but really more the overarching view of the college football playoff as it relates to the NFL in about 30 minutes for a special Monday edition of Carving Up the Context, given that we won't have a Wednesday show. Also getting to lead the show off, Steelers-Ravens. Listen, Ravens just exposed. The Steelers have not. I'll get to that in a moment. Kansas City is rolling. They're the most dangerous they've been all season long, and I don't want to face them post-Christmas or really on Christmas beyond that, especially with the way they're playing. Get to that. What else we got? Bryson's Best 10, my top 10 teams in the National Football League headed into Week 17. Again, we're combining different aspects of a Monday and Wednesday show. We'll do Week 16 recap. We'll do predictions for tonight's Packers-Saints game as well as the Christmas games. And at the end of today's show, got a fun segment we do at this time every year, the naughty and nice lists of sports. I do think you'll want to stay tuned for that one because it will be a fun one, no doubt about it. My guy Patrick is already trolling me in the comments. You know what? He's got every right to. He says, Happy Monday from the voice of chaos. Merry Christmas to the Carver family in advance. Well, Merry Christmas to you and yours, Patrick Brown, and Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to everybody out there watching. And Patrick says, Steelers Nation, let's weld. I had to get it out of the way now versus later. Well, listen, it didn't matter when you got it off because, frankly, it's deserved, the Russell Wilson trolling. So let's talk about my Steelers. But first, that was kind of not a shock to the system for my Steelers against the Baltimore Ravens in a game that Baltimore won 34-17. A little bit of a misleading score just in the sense that this sucker was close throughout, and the Baltimore kind of pulled away really with the pick six by Marlon Humphrey early in the fourth quarter on from that. But these two teams are so similar in so many different ways. And that goes without saying. The Steelers-Ravens rivalry, which I heard Chris Canty on ESPN say recently, shout out Chris Canty, but I heard him say, oh, it's not a rivalry because the Steelers beat him a lot lately. Dude, it's a rivalry. They hate each other passionately. And these coaches, Tom and Harbaugh, know each other better than literally every coach in NFL history knows each other outside of Curly Lambeau and George Halas. Okay, so this is an all-time rivalry. Very similar. Now that the Ravens defense is all of a sudden back, both teams have great defenses. Both teams have excellent wide receiving core. Certainly Pittsburgh is much better with George Pickens in the lineup. Both teams can run the football. Baltimore more than Pittsburgh because Derrick Henry is a monster. Both have excellent coaches. I'm going to go with Mike Tomlin all day, every day. Both special teams tend to be great. Maybe Justin Tucker's back on schedule. I'm not totally convinced of that. And we all know Chris Boswell's money. And the difference that game was Lamar Jackson and it was Russell Wilson. And this isn't even an indictment of Russ. The game wasn't. Because my mindset with the Russell Wilson signing was always, well, upgrade of what we've had for the last, 5 years. Old Big Ben and then a slew of backup quarterbacks. I mean, you saw Mason Rudolph, God bless him, tried his hardest for the Titans yesterday. Kenny Pickett, okay. That's kind of what he is at his best days. Okay, Russell's an upgrade. But if you ask Russell at this stage in his career, 36 years old, year 13, play from behind, that's just not who he is at this stage. And I've said all season long about my Steelers that the highest they've gotten, you'll see Bryce's best 10 later. Spoiler, they're on it. Certainly not as high as they've been. They've been as high as fourth because the defense was rolling, all this, all that. They've beaten a bunch of playoff teams, Denver and the Chargers and Washington, a lot of playoff teams. Is that when you face an Eagles team, listen, Philly's got a better roster. Philly had Jalen Hurts healthy. Eagles are favored. Okay. Baltimore's a different story. You've owned the Ravens. You've been very successful against the Ravens. Okay. Lamar Jackson's played some of his worst football of his career against the Steelers as he has in the playoffs and against Kansas City. We've shown that stat over and over and over on the show. But when it came down to the quarterbacks, which, by the way, if we can, I got the numbers on my phone here. Both teams ran the ball exceptionally well. The Steelers average about 5 yards carry. Ravens average about 6, if you round up on both. So both teams ran the football effectively. Derrick Henry was awesome. The Steelers could not stop him whatsoever throughout the course of that game, particularly early on. But it's Lamar Jackson. Passer rating 115, 3 touchdowns, had the one awful interception, which then got immediately canceled out by the Russell Wilson, even worse, pick 6 to Marlon Humphrey. Is that Pittsburgh, I think, can win multiple playoff games? I still maintain that. That offense is significantly better with George Pickens of the lineup, which, for the my hesitancy with Pittsburgh facing the Kansas City Chiefs on Christmas in front of the whole country to watch, don't feel great about that as a Steelers fan, but looks like Pickens, according to reports, could be back for that game. That's obviously a shot in the arm. That's a huge boost for this Pittsburgh Steelers football team. But ultimately what it comes down to is this. If the defense shows up and shows out, and as much as I love TJ Watt, and I still maintain that is the baddest dude on defense in the National Football League, that's the guy. TJ Watt, best defensive player in football, should win DPOY this season. Draws more attention than any player at his position in football by a long shot. He's been pretty quiet the last couple of games. Now, again, mobile quarterback Jalen Hurts, mobile quarterback Lamar Jackson. Mahomes is mobile, not quite as mobile as those guys. And then you have Joe Burrow in Week 18 who can move, but he's no Lamar Jackson with his legs, certainly. Make an impact against those quarterbacks? Sure. But if you ask Russell Wilson to play from behind, down 10, did his best. Matter of fact, Pittsburgh ended up coming back from down 17 to 7 to tie the football game. Then Baltimore scored. Then you got the stop. Russell throws the pick 6. Now it's game over. Is that the Steelers are one of the best rosters. I've said this for the last year and a half. I think they're one of the 5 best rosters in professional football. Could they use could they use another wide receiver? Sure. But Calvin Austin's a good speed guy. George Pickens, when he's not fighting literally everything that breathes, is a very productive wide receiver. Freiermuth, the tight end. You got 2 really, really good running backs. O-line's actually been pretty good over the last few games, at least better than usual. Arthur Smith's doing his thing. You can't blame Mike Tomlin for this. I'm seeing a lot of Steelers fans up. Here we go again. The Steelers winning 10 games, sneaking into the playoffs, blowing the division, and Tomlin's going to come back. Guys, Tomlin didn't fumble inside the 10, trying to score a touchdown, trying to do too much when you had a nice gain already. Russell, you're a baseball player, former baseball player. Just slide down there, then let Najee Harris or Warren or Freiermuth or somebody punch it in. And then the pick 6 was nothing short of an atrocious decision on the part of Russ. These 2 rosters, these 2 teams are very, very similar. Heck, the cultures are similar. Defense, toughness, run the football. We're going to outlast you. That's who the Steelers and Ravens have been for 25 years. The Steelers even longer than that because they're a much older franchise. But that was the difference. And this is, listen, I go back to an old saying, an old trope that I've said on the show for 3 years. The running game has gotten more important over the last year or so. The value of the running back has certainly increased. Ask the Ravens, ask the Eagles, ask the Packers, a bunch of teams. It is still, and barring something unforeseen, will forever be a quarterback's league. The Steelers have done everything right. Everything. Coach, roster, all of it. Heck, they finally got a good OC in Arthur Smith. But for as good as Russell is within a system at this stage in his career, that's not going to be a guy who's going to lead you from down double digits to get to Mahomes and Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Joe Burrow, etc. That's just not who he is. And so I think for Pittsburgh, listen, the mindset moving forward, let's win this division. The good news is for the Steelers, it's not all doom and gloom. George Pickens is back. You still control your fate, even despite losing the game. The Steelers control their own fate to win the AFC North. The problem is the next 2 quarterbacks they face, Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow, maybe the 2 best. So I think it is going to be tough for Pittsburgh to win the North. The good news is they're in the playoffs, finish the season strong. I think it really, really helped Mike Tomlin if you could finally win a playoff game this year, which you haven't done since 2016. At that point, then I feel like you almost have to bring Russ back next year because the quarterback draft is very weak in 2025. Draft a guy in 26. So, yeah, I mean, that was kind of the game where I'm like, okay, Lamar's doing his thing. He doesn't usually do it against the Steelers, but in general, Lamar is a playmaker. We know this. 40 touchdowns, 4 picks would tell you that. And it's like, okay, I'm waiting for that play from Russ. I'm waiting. He made a couple nice throws. There was a good deep ball to Calvin Austin at one point in this game. And I'm like, I'm waiting for Russell to, and he's just not that guy anymore. At least without George Pickens, he's not. And the fact of the matter is George Pickens, for as talented as I have lauded him to be, is one of the most unreliable, emotional guys in the National Football League. There's no question about it. Let's see what we got in the comments. Let's see. Luke says, saw you working at Disney. Love the passion energy. Keep it up, bro. Appreciate that, Luke. Definitely more announcements on that to come. Let's put it that way. But I appreciate that. Appreciate that comment. All right, let's get into Kansas City, because I feel like I've been on a little bit of an island on the Chiefs. I feel like I do not believe, matter of fact, I am an opponent of being a contrarian just for the sake of being a contrarian. I find those people to be kind of annoying and attention seekers. I don't like those kind of people. Usually those are conspiracy theorists. Usually those are clickbait artists on the internet. I hate that. But I also don't believe in, on the contrary, being a guy or a person who is constantly just going with the flow, wherever the wind is blowing, go that way. And that's what I feel like I've been going against with the narrative surrounding the Chiefs this season. So Kansas City wins again. Okay, they're now 14-1. They beat the Texans 27-19. Kansas City's better than Houston. Texans will be a playoff team. Just devastated for what happened to Tank Dell. Man, prayers up for that young man. Back-to-back years suffering in the injury that he did, almost in the exact same fashion, basically friendly fire. God bless him. I knock on wood for him, praying for him. Want nothing but the best for the long-term health of Tank Dell. There's no question. Sucked to see that. For Kansas City all season, I've been trying to rack my brain, like, what am I missing right now? They keep winning. Mahomes is clutch. The defense comes up with the big plays. The special teams comes up with the big plays. Andy Reid is never outcoached. Kelsey makes big catches. They're getting healthier, adding Pacheco back, getting a real left tackle, in free agency, getting Hollywood Brown back this week. And all I hear every single week, so many things wrong with the Chiefs. They're winning too close. Huh? So now this is college football where style points are everything. I was not made aware of this. I didn't know that just winning the game straight up is really all it needed to do in the NFL to have sustained success. If you have a formula that works long term. And now, finally, in the words of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, finally, the Kansas City Chiefs are Vegas favorites to win the Super Bowl. Go figure. Yeah, team's got the best quarterback, coach, won the last 2 Super Bowls, got one of the best defenses in the league. Oh, shocker, they're favorites to win the Super Bowl. Is that I hear about these other teams. By the way, any of which could beat Kansas City. If you'll see where I've got the Chiefs, we got these other teams on Bryson's Best 10 coming up in about 30 to 40 minutes from now. If Buffalo beats Kansas City in the playoffs, they'll be like, yeah, you know what? Josh Allen was finally due to finally get Mahomes in the biggest game. And the way Josh has been playing, sure, we could see it happen. After that, I know Mike Tomlin's capable of pulling a rabbit out of the hat, but again, the man's not won a playoff game since the Obama administration. It's been a while. Okay, Baltimore, sorry, I don't trust Lamar. I don't. I don't trust Lamar in the playoffs as is. I darn sure don't trust him in the playoffs against the dynasty. Okay, the Houston, they're too young. The Chargers, not enough offense. The Broncos, I'm not even sure if they're going to be in. Cincinnati, maybe, but they can't stop a nosebleed. Mahomes would torch that defense. And then the NFC, I don't know. What's the long-term health of Jalen Hurts? Don't trust Nick Sirianni. And as for Detroit, y'all know I'm the biggest Detroit Lions guy ever. I think they're going to go to the Super Bowl. I think they're going to win the NFC. Said that for a long time now, many months. They're just too darn beat up right now. And by the way, if we're talking in the margins, what it comes down to, one team's got Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. The other team's got Jared Goff and Dan Campbell. Goff is really good. Dan Campbell's excellent. Andy Reid is in the Mount Rushmore potentially of coaches, certainly among offensive coaches, and Mahomes is in the Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks. So, I'm a Steelers fan. Obviously, I want my team to beat Kansas City, certainly on Christmas Day, but more importantly, in the playoffs, should that matchup come to fruition. But I'm telling you, I keep hearing, oh, this is wrong with the Chiefs. Oh, they're winning too close. They're not sexy enough aesthetically for my taste. Okay, well that goes in the face of virtually half the dynasties in the NFL. I don't know, with the Green Bay Packers in the 60s, well, really football in the 60s wasn't that aesthetically pleasing, but were the Packers in the 60s? No. Were the Steelers in the 70s? Actually, their nickname was literally the Steel Curtain. And to agree, the Steelers still follow that mantra. It has gotten them 6 championships, as much as anybody. Okay, the Niners were pretty in the 80s, right? Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, the GOAT receiver, Bill Walsh, who I think is the GOAT coach. Okay, the 90s Cowboys. Sure, you have Michael Irvin and Troy Aikman, the flashiness. You had Deion Sanders at the end of that dynasty. But more than anything, what were the Dallas Cowboys? The Great Wall of Dallas and the all-time leading rusher, Emmitt Smith. We're going to punch you in the mouth. We're going to run the football, set up the play action between Aikman and Playmaker, do our thing. We got Moose Johnson out there in front of Emmitt Smith. We're going to punch you in the mouth. Charles Haley. That was the Dallas Cowboys. And then the Patriots, for 20 years, they were the Spurs. They were the most boring dynasty of the modern era. Now, listen, I'm the biggest Brady guy ever. I've for years, I fought even my fellow Tennessee fans and saying, guys, Brady's better than Manning. Love Manning, all-time great. Brady's better. That's kind of what dynasties tend to look like. I mean, Buffalo, when they'd lose games to the Rams, Kansas City can't beat that team. It's like, well, I don't know. The Rams did, Detroit gets beat by Buffalo. Okay, well, Detroit scored 42. I mean, what are you gonna... This is what the Chiefs do. That's now, I believe, 16 straight wins. I think that's the number. 16 straight wins in one-score games. Mahomes, best third-down quarterback in the league. They're great in the red zone. Mahomes not turned the ball over. They're now healthy at receiver. Now they've got Hollywood Brown, Xavier Worthy, DeAndre Hopkins, Travis Kelce, Isaiah Pacheco run the football. All of a sudden, the Chiefs now have really talented weapons. All of a sudden, now they have one of the most, this has been the case all year and for a long time now, but interior of their line, they're great. Trey Smith, go Vols. Creed Humphrey, maybe the best center in the league. Oh, and by the way, defensively, they got the best interior defensive lineman in the sport in Chris Jones. On the perimeter, they're really good too. They got Steve Spagnuolo, the best defensive coordinator. They got Andy Reid, the best coach. And if they win one more game, which they're going to, they're going to have home field advantage. Again, road to the Super Bowl in the AFC, goes through Arrowhead. Listen, if you're tired of seeing the Chiefs run, hey, listen, I want my Steelers to win as much as anybody. Of course. And eventually, you're not going to win every Super Bowl in a row. Eventually, someone's going to get you. I get people are sick of the run. I get it. People got tired just like they got tired of the Patriots and the Warriors and UConn women's basketball and Alabama football. I get it. But just say that. Be honest with that. It's a reasonable opinion to have as opposed to one and done. I mean, God bless him. Rex Ryan, great coach, great defensive coach. But every week, Rex Ryan, seeing teams like that, that's got one and done written all over it. They're the 2020 Steelers. It's like, you got to be kidding me. I watched the 2020 Steelers. They're night and day. By the way, the Steelers fell apart at the end of that season. Last I checked, Chiefs 14-1. Something's working. Oh, the refs. Okay. The refs gave you 14 wins? Really? And by the way, the thing is, too, we talk about, the refs and the Chiefs. You know when we talk about the refs and the Chiefs? A, because people hate the Chiefs. B, Chiefs are on national TV just about every week. They're going to be on Netflix on Christmas. They're on standalone game Saturday. They're on Sunday night and CBS and Monday night and Thursday night and heck, Friday night against the Vegas Raiders on Black Friday. We just see them a lot. But I watch games every week and I'm like, oh my God, that's a brutal call. How does they... And I don't even see it on the next day in the NFL discussion. I'm like, there was like a clear pass interference there. I'll never forget week 1 when the Cardinals and the Bills played. Probably a pass interference that the refs missed at the end of that game that helped Buffalo win. Nobody's talking about the refs being in the pocket of the Bills. So I just, the narratives are so easily just, dispelled. And the thing that I've said all year for the Chiefs, you're like, Bryson, why are they winning these close games? Oh, I don't know, because they're bored. They're not waking up excited to play the Carolina Panthers in Charlotte. They're not dying to play. Yeah, they're rivals with the Raiders, but it's the Raiders, who, by the way, just shot themselves in the foot by winning yesterday. What are you doing? But they're not going crazy to play the Las Vegas Raiders, quarterbacked by Aiden O'Connell and coached by Antonio Pierce. They're like, yeah, we're going to do what we got to do. We're going to kind of, go in cruise control, and then Mahomes is going to make a play, and if he doesn't, the defense will, and if they don't, the special teams will. And that's what we do because we're a dynasty, and that's what dynasties do. It's what the Warriors did, what the Patriots did, what the Bulls did, what the Lakers did, what every dynasty does in sports history. Reality is the Chiefs aren't that much different from a lot of NFL dynasties. Are they a little boring? Yeah, sometimes. Can they be magic on some other plays? Yeah, because they got a all-time talent, the greatest talent that's ever played the position, Patrick Mahomes. So, if you like the Chiefs, I get it. Listen, I'd be pissed if they were stealing Super Bowls from me too. I get it. I'm a Steelers fan. I want us to eventually break through, get a quarterback, face up against the Chiefs with what we have defensively and what we have offensively, but they're the best. I mean, listen, I keep saying this is the last point I make, and then we'll go to break. Get to carving up the context in about 5 minutes. My thing with Kansas City, one of the things for me has always been, well, they're not looking that great in wins. Okay, because they didn't look great in wins last year. Frankly, they actually, lost games. I think there was a stretch where they lost like 4 of 6 games or something crazy. They weren't looking very good at all. If the Chiefs would win 11-6, looks pedestrian by their lofty standards of the regular season, and then they went out in round 2 to Buffalo, and then came back this year and looked the same, it'd be like, dang, there could be the concern. Is this going to repeat? Does Mahomes have enough? Those would be perfectly legitimate questions. The problem is the Chiefs looked worse last year than this year, went through a gauntlet. The 11-win Dolphins, 11-win Bills with Josh Allen, 13-win Ravens with Lamar, or 14-win, 13-win, 14-win, and then beat the 49ers, who are the best roster in the league last year in the Super Bowl. So, yeah, they're the favorites. Duh. Obviously. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, come on now. What are we talking about? Man. I mean, you saw it on social media yesterday. Oh, the refs having the back of the Chiefs. It's funny. I never see I should say never. I rarely see that sort of thing with other teams who got kind of lucky based on favorable calls. And by the way, as I always say, if you need the call to go in your favor in order to win the game, didn't play well enough to win the game. It's not a hard concept. All right, let's go to break. When we come back, a fantastic edition of Carving Out the Context, because listen, I'm probably going to sound like an old grump, and I certainly don't want to sound like that. Certainly don't want to sound like that around the holidays. I mean, come on, this is the most wonderful time of the year. It's Christmas or whatever holiday that you and yours celebrate. Like, we want to be happy and we want to be festive. And I may sound like an old grump, but I do, even with my Vols losing badly and whatever, and everything else that happened on Friday and Saturday, I feel a little validated in something. I can take little victories, you got to find silver lining somewhere, and we're going to expose that silver lining on Carving Up the Context. So we'll be back in a minute. We're just getting started now in a holiday-themed edition of Carving Up Live. Be back in a minute. Welcome back to Carving Up Live. So we do a segment every Wednesday normally called Carving Up the Context. Essentially, I take a story, try and go a little bit deeper than what's being talked about on the surface. But because it's just so happens to be that Christmas Day is on a Wednesday, we're not doing a show on Wednesday. Probably be back with a show on Thursday just to react to the football games, some basketball action. There's some really good NBA games on Christmas. We get Steph and LeBron on Christmas. I mean, it doesn't get better than that. But do Carving Out the Context today on a Monday because the college football playoff first round happened in the first edition of the new 12-team playoff. And all 4 games were duds. Clemson, Texas was pseudo-interesting for a while. I took Clemson the point, so I was really following that game a lot during the Steelers game. And Clemson just, I mean, there's not enough talent relative to Texas. So, I mean, the better team won that game. But all these considered, these were 4 blowouts, and I wanted to get into that on Carving Out the Context, what that means for the college football playoff relative to the National Football League. So, as the head coach of the Colorado Buffaloes, prime time, Deion Sanders says, give me my theme music. Now, do we have it? Give me my theme music. For that. On this week's edition of Carving Out the Context, wanted to get into college football and the college football playoff first round because we had some somewhat entertaining matchups coming in this week. I mean, hey, Notre Dame, Indiana, in-state game. You know, what would Indiana do against actual competition? You know, how would they fare? All these different things were big-time stories. Tennessee, Ohio State was the most anticipated game. Much to my chagrin, as a Vols fan, even that one was a straight dud. There's no question about it. SMU got housed by Penn State. I mean, they were never going to win that game, and Clemson just doesn't have enough talent to compete with Texas. There's no shame in those guys losing. But I don't want to sound the old grump. I don't want to sound like old man yelling on his front porch, "Get off my lawn, whippersnappers." I don't want to sound like that. I really don't. And I don't want to sound like a party pooper of all things. Those people are the worst. But I do kind of cringe. I always have. I don't know. It's just a natural inclination of mine when people say, prefer college to the pros, or not even prefer college. You can prefer it. People have different preferences. Nothing wrong with that. I think college football is better than the NFL. No, it is not. It's just objectively not. So I love college football. I think it is. I'm obviously a Vols fan, as I've said many times on the show. Not trying to gain like sympathy or anything, of course. Definitely not. I love college football. The atmospheres, the bands, the crowd noise, the pageantry, the tradition, the hype, all of it is Americana. It's great. Everybody loves college football. If you don't, you got problems if you don't love college football. But I do watch games. As great as the pomp and circumstance are, I do enjoy the games, and for them to be an entertaining product and relative to the NFL, it's not remotely close. The whole point of extending the 12-team playoff, by the way, which I agreed with. I for years I was anti 12-team playoff because I'm like, we see blowouts between the 1 seed and the 4 seed. What are we going to see between 5 and 12? Well, with NIL, with the transfer portal, with conference realignment, they they did have to extend the playoff to where they did. So I am in favor of the move. I still defend it. Anybody saying they shouldn't have done this, I disagree wholeheartedly. Okay, the landscape in college football has changed, frankly, for the better. There do need to be NIL and transfer portal regulations, but those should be options to athletes who are making these programs, these different institutions, millions upon millions of dollars, when up until 2021, they got virtually no return for it. So I'm all for that. The problem is, until we see, and I'm not sure if we're going to see it to the level that we would like to anytime soon, a certain level of balance, which I've always said parity is horrible for pro sports. You want a dynasty because the worst team in the NFL or the NBA or whatever can still, WNBA worst team can get Caitlin Clark. Like that's how pro sports works. College, it's not. The best teams just get better if you have good recruiting staffs and coaching staffs, obviously. But the same problem continues to occur. And Alfred Parso Jr., my guy, put together this fantastic graphic in terms of playoff margin of victory. So we're going back to 2014 because 2014 season was the first year the playoff was instituted. But we're looking at the NFL and college football playoff games, margin of victory. And here's what it looks like. I'm sure it's not terribly shocking. 18 point victory in the college football playoff. The teams that win the college football playoff since it started in 2014 win on average by about 18 points. Like that's the 3-score blowout. That's not close. We had a national championship 2 years ago where Georgia won by 58 points against TCU. And then the NFL playoffs, average margin of victory is 11 points. So double digits, but not. Teams aren't getting throttled more often than not. But more important than that, because we could talk about, okay, for years, the 4 seed usually was outmatched against the 1 seed. Certainly 12 seed Clemson is not better than Texas, who is the 5 seed. Texas, one of the 3 most talented teams in college football this year. But what about based on how the bracket played out, the 2 best? teams in college football? How do they stack up? And as the best two teams relative to the bracket stack up in the National Football League. And this is really where you see your difference. In the College Football Playoff National Championship, the margin of victory actually goes up. Regular playoff games, you win by 18. Championship, you win by 20. Since the playoffs started in the Super Bowl, on average, you win by 8 since 2014. Like everything, like I remember we had a stretch. I forget, it was between like Super Bowl 49, which is the best football game to date that I've watched between the Seahawks and the Patriots and all the storylines and what happened in that game. But we had a stretch where we had like 5 or so like really good Super Bowls in a row. We kind of got spoiled. Like, I remember there was that one bad Patriots-Rams Super Bowl that was, people say, oh, it was a defensive battle. Teams couldn't cross midfield. Nobody wants to see that. We want to see some offense. But that's the difference. Is it not just the talent? We know the talent in the NFL is better than college football. Duh. That's the reason they're in the NFL. But in college, there's a sense of, how do I put this? You know what? We're in the holidays, so I'll use this example, this analogy. It's like there's that one present that cost, maybe if you're a little kid and there was like that one big shiny whatever that you wanted for Christmas. It's kind of expensive, and maybe your parents got it for you for Christmas. And then by like December 27th, you're like, it was fun for a while, but it wasn't, not a lot of meat to that bone. Whereas there's that one, the NFL, you know what the NFL is? Underwear and socks. They'll last you a long time. And they're essential to basic dress. I mean, that's how it works. Whereas college football, it's more of like the, what's a good example? Maybe like a really breakable toy. Fun for a while, but don't be too rough with it, or there goes the Christmas present. Maybe it's a faulty analogy, I don't know, but there's a lot of pomp and circumstances, hype and whatnot that the NFL almost always delivers. The best quarterback, Mahomes, always delivers when the moment counts for it. We know Brady did for years. The best teams are great, but sometimes you'll have a Giants, you'll have an 07 Giants. The equivalent of the 07 Giants would not stand a chance against the equivalent, college football equivalent of the 07 Patriots in a playoff game. It just doesn't happen. We don't see upsets terribly often. I mean, was Indiana and Notre Dame not the most predictable outcome we could have seen? Indiana, you got Kurt Signetti, that guy's such a blowhard. He's so full of it. Talking about, we dominate, and use other colorful language, every team in college football and whatnot, and then Notre Dame comes in and clocks them. Most predictable game ever. SMU, by the way, defended SMU in over Alabama in the playoff. Defended that because my thing is, Bama, if you want the benefit of the doubt, beat two teams that would not have been bowl eligible had they not beaten you. Take care of business. But they were going to be overwhelmed against Penn State. Guys, it's one of the loudest stadiums in college football. They had no chance against the Nittany Lions. Okay, Clemson, and listen, I figured Clemson was fight because Dabo, for my criticism of him, Dabo is a great coach. There's no doubt about it. Klubnik's good. Texas is just more talented. They were at home. They were going to win. That was kind of ended up being sort of the closest game, not by margin of victory because Indiana scored 2 meaningless touchdowns at the end, but pseudo entertaining and impressive. And then Ohio State, Tennessee was like, hey, 8 seed Ohio State, 9 seed Tennessee. Here we go. And it was a arse kicking from kickoff. I mean, it was unbelievable. Listen, as a Vols fan, am I shocked we lost? No, I'm not shocked. Ohio State's more talented than Tennessee. Did I see 42-17 coming? Can't say I did, guys. I'm not going to lie to you. Call me a biased Tennessee fan. Didn't see that one coming. Whereas in the NFL, if we get a Patriots Seahawks, we got Tom Brady versus the Legion of Boom. Oh, we're getting an all-time classic. If we get last year, Mahomes and the Dynasty Chiefs and Andy Reid against the team that probably is more talented, but they've never done it before and they can't get over the hump, and we end up getting an all-time classic Super Bowl. The NFL tends to deliver. Even in games where we're like, didn't see that Super Bowl matchup before the season. Rams-Bengals ended up being a really fun game. We see that all the time in the National Football League, and we really don't see it that much in college football. That's not to say I'm anti-Alabama, Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State winning championships. That's always been the case. Listen, if you want to beat the big dogs, recruit better than the big dogs, get a better coach than the big dogs, compete with the big dogs. But at the same time, it is a matter of, yeah, there's a little hype, build-up, pomp, circumstance, and the on-field product is not remotely close to the NFL. And listen, if the games were closer, it'd be like, hey, it's more imperfect. It's not as, certainly the players aren't as good, but it's a little bit of a mess that's kind of fun to watch, which college football can be at times. But these are, I mean, we're watching something else by halftime. We're like, okay, I mean, maybe you're still watching if you bet the game and bet, took certain parlays and whatever. But as far as just the average fan viewing experience, not that fun. I mean, by the way, next week, again, sorry to throw a wet blanket on this, but this, I mean, let's be honest. Look next week in college football in the semifinal. Listen, Ohio State, Oregon's going to be an awesome game. I mean, those might be the two best teams. I had Oregon winning the Natty before the year, so obviously I'm going with the Ducks. But Texas, Arizona State has a special running back. Texas is better literally everywhere else. Okay, Notre Dame, Georgia, okay, but Georgia doesn't have their quarterback. Like, I kind of think Notre Dame should win. I mean, Georgia's a 1-point favorite. I kind of think Notre Dame should win that game the way they've been playing as of late. And Penn State, Boise State, I mean, neutral site, Penn State's a double-digit favorite. That's one thing, too, you don't see in the NFL much. Double-digit favorites in playoff games. You just don't see it. Unless another team's like missing their starting quarterback, you just don't see it. So in this week's edition of Carving Up the Context, I love college football. Love it. It's the best. This has been the most exciting college football season because of conference realignment, the NFL, with NIL, transfer portal, all these different things. This has been great. I've had a blast watching this college football season. But at the same time, it's not the on-field product. Not even just in terms of talent, just in terms of excitability. Not even the same ballpark as the NFL. Just not. This isn't Caitlin Clark and women's college basketball to the WNBA. It's not that. So there you go. See what we got in the comments. Patrick, on a side note, we were robbed of a Super Bowl between Breeze and Brady. Just saying, the storylines would have been sensational. 2018, to be exact. Yeah, and that's. I mean, I mentioned that Patriots-Rams Super Bowl. That was a. Whew. Listen, I know. Maybe there was some. There were defensive tackles and linebackers and safeties all over America that were loving every second of that game. The rest of us, that sucked. And for the record, again, I tend to be I always say I'm a moderate human. I just am. I'm a moderate political, moderate in terms of my political beliefs. I'm moderate as it pertains to, I want offense, I want defense, but I don't want necessarily Rams Chiefs in same year, by the way, Patrick, 2018, where it was like 54-51. That's too much offense. That's like Big 12 on steroids or old school Big 12, but I also don't want 13-3. That's terrible. Nobody wants to see that. Somewhere in between. But yeah, I mean, and that, by the way, that was as a result of, but that's, by the way, that's another example though, quickly, and then we'll move on to week 16 recap. That was something else that I talked about on the Chiefs segment. Saints fans like, oh, we were robbed. It was a horrible call at the end with our guy getting hit. Yeah, it was. I mean, it was one of the worst non-calls I've ever seen in my life in sports. Forget football and sports. The missed PI call, awful. The Saints fans saying that was the reason they lost, BS. Okay, you blew clock. I love Sean Payton. That's my guy, but horrible clock management leading up to that, which gave the Rams a chance to tie it in the first place. And in overtime, Drew Brees threw an interception. Like, you cost yourself that game more than the officials did. That's one thing. But yeah, I'm with you, Patrick. A Brees Brady Super Bowl would have been awesome. We did get to see a Brees Brady playoff game, which ended up being the final one Drew ever played in 2020 before he retired. But Drew was certainly closer to his prime. That'd have been fun. Patrick, I knew IU, Indiana, would fold like a lawn chair. They didn't belong whatsoever, and it's still exposed the committee could have put another team versus Ohio State. And listen, I will say, in a weird way, Tennessee getting shellacked was actually validation for the committee. It's like, yeah, that team against Ohio State, Tennessee got mowed over. Alabama lost to that team. It's like, yeah, Bama's not one of the 12 best teams. So in a weird way, again, I know that doesn't work in sports. I understand that, but a weird, validation. Patrick, the only thing I enjoyed about that 2018 Super Bowl was SpongeBob taking over the halftime show before Travis Scott took the stage. I will say that halftime show was kind of terrible. It was like that. Isn't that the one that got? Well, of course, now might not be the best time to mention this individual's name. But Jay-Z, as like the guy who's putting together the Super Bowls, that halftime show was awful. And I love Travis Scott. He's great, but that was one of the worst Super Bowl halftime shows I've ever seen. It was horrible. Everyone since then has been pretty either amazing or solid. That was a bad one. My favorite thing from that Super Bowl, Patrick, was the NFL 100 commercial. That was classic. That's the best Super Bowl commercial I've ever seen. That was great. Yeah. All right, let's move on to Week 16 NFL recap. Just look over some of the other games that happened in the National Football League. Again, more of a condensed individual take day version on a Monday of certain games. Just wanted to do a little recap because we do still have Bryce's best 10 predictions for tonight's game and the Christmas games, as well as naughty and nice list in professional sports. You definitely want to stay tuned for that. I never got a chance because we didn't have a show on Friday to talk Chargers-Broncos. Chargers won that one 34-27. Justin Herbert was sensational in this game. Had 2 touchdowns, 284 passing, QBR 0 to 100 of 87, and a pass rate of 110. He was excellent. Lad McConkey, you see the impact he still has with this team. Quietly, Denver's kind of in trouble. Like, I'll get to the Bengals. Cincinnati's actually really alive for the playoffs. Now, according to ESPN, they only have like a 14% chance. A lot has to go their way. But basically, it comes down to, we'll just talk about the Denver side of it. Broncos have 9 wins. You know their last 2 games are against? Same case as the Steelers. Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes. That ain't great. That's not ideal. And we could transition now to Cincinnati, I guess, who beat Cleveland. That was one of my, if I were a betting man, games. It was a lot of points, 9.5. Cleveland's awful. Duh. Joe Burrow was sensational. 3 touchdowns, pass rate of 134. Basically, what has to go Cincinnati's way, obviously, they have to win out. And by the way, Denver and Pittsburgh, not easy games. But if Cincinnati wins out, Denver loses out, which we told you who they play. The Bengals, which, I mean, how great of a game is that for the NFL and NFL Network on this coming Saturday? That'll be fun. And then the Colts and the Dolphins can't win out. So that's and by the way, I don't think they will. The Dolphins and Colts are not going to win their last 2 games. I don't think. Cincinnati's very alive for a playoff spot. And I thought at 4-8 they were dead in the water. Now, I still don't trust that defense, and if Bo Nix torches them on Saturday, won't be shocked. But, God, Joe Burrow's having an awesome season. And listen, I hate the Bengals as a Steelers fan, but I've always said there's nothing that drives me more crazy than incompetent organizations wasting great athletes. Like the Cavs did it with LeBron for forever. I mean, Joe Burrow's got 39 touchdowns and 8 picks. I mean, the guy's been unreal. This is number 1 in pass yards. If the Bengals were, what are they now, 7-8? If the Bengals were 11-4, Burrow's your MVP, I think. I really believe that. Just how he's carried this defense. Rams beat the Jets. What a surprise. No-show disappeared again.
You done messed up, A.A. Ron!
And A.A. Ron in this game. Can we see his numbers? Because I heard on Twitter the game wasn't his fault. 256 passing, not bad. 1 touchdown, pass rate of 91 is solid. The problem is he had a fumble in the second half that really kind of cost them, and his team got shut out. And his defense, by the way, the Jets defense, which has been horrible for like 2 months now, held the Rams 19. That'll work. You're at home against a West Coast team at 1 o'clock Eastern. That helps. Now you got Garrett Wilson. Seems like he's going to request a trade tomorrow after the game. I mean, but again, it's definitely not Aaron's fault. It's definitely not Aaron's fault. Absolutely not. As for the Rams, 9-6. This, folks, I try not to lecture much, if ever. I don't like lecturers. However, if I can just present this as not just validation, but a lesson for everybody, not even for the fans, for the media, who just flip and flop and just go as the wind blows. And I talked like what I was talking about with the Chiefs earlier. Just week to week, you never know. I have this take this week, this take tomorrow. No. Consistency. When the Rams were sitting there 1-4, weren't looking good, were hurt, and Stafford wasn't playing well, and I still maintained the faith. I said, the Cardinals, they'll find a way to screw it up. Seattle is, I think, really talented and actually quite well coached. I like Mike McDonald a lot. Geno is fine. He's a good quarterback, and that's about where it ends. The exact same thing can be said about Brock Purdy, who, if things are not absolutely positively ideal for him, he turns into a backup, which I don't think he is, but he looks like it at times. And the Rams were going to get healthy, get their left tackle back, get their 2 wide receivers back. Kyron Williams would run the football. McVay's an awesome coach. Stafford's still great. And they would win the NFC West like I thought before the season. So just a note, if you make a preseason prediction, just stick with it. You may look dumb. You may look like an idiot in the end, and I have at times. But if you just stick with it, and sometimes you get rewarded for it. But good win for the Rams, 19-9 over the Jets. Game of the day, Commanders and Eagles. So hopefully Jalen Hurts can be okay. He got concussed early in this game. I don't know if he's going to be available for Dallas next week. I don't want to say it's not going to matter because the Cowboys actually looked pretty good last night. But although that game's in Philly, so the Eagles should win that game. But Kenny Pickett was, the 70s to pass running, that's about what Kenny Pickett is. Trust me, as a Steelers fan, I know. But Jaden Daniels, have yourself a day, young man. 5 touchdowns, QBR 0 to 100 of 95. Pass rating of 99, but he ran the football for 81 yards. He threw for 258. Washington's now is all but guaranteed they'll be in the playoffs. They finished, by the way, fun Sunday night game. Good job, NFL, for flexing this. We got Atlanta and Washington Sunday Night Football next week. 2 rookie quarterbacks who I love in Daniels and Penix. Good job by the National Football League for scheduling that game. But listen, kudos to Washington. I did take the Commanders and the points. Had Hurts stayed healthy, Philly probably would have covered, but just with the relentless nature, listen, Philly was due for a rough day at the office defensively. They've been great to this point all season long, so I'm not going to panic on a guy that I've given nothing but love to, and I'm going to continue to do so with Vic Fangio. But listen, Jaden Daniels has been tremendous. Yeah, Patrick, Ayahuasca Rogers. I still have not had time to get to the documentary. I did see the clip. Whew. Anyways, Falcons over the Giants. No surprise here, 34-7. The Giants are actively tanking. They're probably going to get Shedeur Sanders, Michael Penix Jr. So you look at his numbers, you're like, 18 of 27, 202 passing, no touchdowns, 1 pick. He had a pass rating 73, QBR of 46 from 0 to 100. Not great. If you watch the game, first of all, that pick was 100% not his fault. Kyle Pitts had soap on his hands, had Dove soap on his gloves. I don't know what happened. It was like a slow motion, like juggling it 17 times before the Giants picked it off at the end of the half. I thought Penix had some zip on the football. Like, he looks like everything I thought he'd be in his first start. Again, you're not going to have sky expectations for first start in the NFL, but this is what I loved about Penix, and this is why I thought he was the second best QB in this draft to Caleb Williams, who I still believe in. Certainly, I'm not going to give up on Caleb. The Bears are a disaster. But zip on the football. People talking about, the knee injuries, he doesn't move well. I don't know. He moved pretty well in this game. Moved to his left. He's a lefty. Has a good zip on the ball, was accurate. Again, the turnover 100% was not his fault. Great arm. Like, I liked what I saw. People are going to rip the Falcons for giving Kirk the long-term deal. My mindset is Kirk's the placeholder. The roster's talented. You didn't want a rookie quarterback to have the expectations. Hey, go win the division. Kirk would do his job. Put you in a position where now Atlanta, thanks to the Tampa Bay loss, Atlanta controls their fate to win the NFC South. Now, they were my preseason prediction to win the division. I didn't know if Penix was going to play this year. But obviously good win for the Falcons. He did what you were supposed to, and that's blow out the Giants. But Penix looked good. Patrick, cry Eagles cry. Thank you, Washington. Yeah, rough loss. I would say rough loss for Eagles. They were due for a loss. It really hurts their chances of getting the 1 seed, but they were worst case scenario going to be the 2 seed anyway. They'd have to fall apart, and Washington would have to win their last 2 in order for the Eagles to win the division. For the Commanders to win the division. That's not going to happen. Panthers and Cardinals, 36-30. Listen, I know people think I'm crazy or thought I was crazy for saying Bryce Young's not as bad as what it looks like. That's why I sound like it's not as bad as it looks. I said, listen, I thought CJ Stroud was the better prospect coming out of last year's draft. I certainly still stand on that. But when people like bailing on Bryce after last year, I'm like, oh, I don't know. They might have the worst owner in the league. Now they have a good coach now. Dave Canales, I think, is a really smart young coach. Now they have some weapons. They have that Leggett kid and Adam Thielen. They have a really good running game with Chuba Hubbard, who was awesome yesterday. 152 yards, including the game-winning touchdown on the ground. But Bryce Young, how's this work? Okay. 158 yards passing, not great, but 2 touchdowns. Did not turn the football over. QBR of 80, pass rating of 107, ran for 68 and another touchdown. No, people jumped off the Bryce train. I wasn't one of them. I'm like, listen, his height and his size are going to hamper him. They're going to limit him. I acknowledge that, but did I expect him to drag a bad Panthers franchise with the physical limitations? No. Just needs some stability around him. Like, that's the thing we didn't talk about with Houston and CJ Stroud last year. Stroud's more talented. Stroud's better. Absolutely. But he inherited he got D'Amico Ryans. He got the weapons with, God bless him again, but while healthy, Tank Dell and Nico Collins and Dalton Schultz and a good defense. Bryce inherited trash around him. And now the Panthers are playing good football. They're playing spirited. Now Carolina's got 4 wins. They were, I'd say after the first couple games of the year, people thought they'd struggle to get 1 game. Bryce has a little bit of zip on the ball. He's pretty accurate. People want to get away from Bryce too early. I said, well, slow your roll. Patrick, your thoughts on Michael Vick being hired as Norfolk State's head coach? Love it. Absolutely love it. Absolutely wishing the best for Michael Vick. Again, this opportunity. Listen, I think the Deion Sanders hiring at Colorado may start a trend of former players who are still relatively young, getting future opportunities to be head coaches. I love it. I'm pulling for Michael Vick. I saw him on Fox yesterday. He was really emotional about the opportunity. Definitely pulling for him. And Norfolk State's getting them a good one. That's a really cool opportunity. I think Vick is going to do very well on that. Colts beat the Titans 38-30. The Colts ran for 300 yards in this game, 335 to be exact, 4 touchdowns. They won a game with Anthony Richardson completing 7 passes because Shane Steichen does not trust him whatsoever to throw a forward pass. Listen, former Steeler great Mason Rudolph did what he could. Listen, he had 3 picks, but he also had 2 touchdowns. He did what he could. It's better than his new backup would have done. We know that for sure. But Tennessee fought back, but the Colts won this game. They're still alive. Not just for a wild card spot, but the Colts are still sort of alive for the division. Texans would have to collapse, but the Colts are still alive. Lions blowing out the Bears. Detroit getting back their season back on track. How about the Detroit Lions? Dan Campbell, what'd y'all do to the Chicago Bears, my man?
Kneecap.
Sure did. They won 34-17 over the Chicago Bears. Jared Goff was great. 3 touchdowns, no turnovers, and a passer rating of 137. Jahmyr Gibbs, 100 yards. Listen, the loss of David Montgomery was a killer. The fact that we got the news last week that it looks like he'll be available for the divisional round is gigantic for the Giants. For the Lions. But Jahmyr, if he's out, Jahmyr Gibbs can hold down that fort. Yes, is he the bruiser that Montgomery is? Of course not, but he can run between the tackles. We all know his speed. He's the lightning to Montgomery's thunder. But obviously everybody's talking about the trick play. I'm of the mindset, I think Ben Johnson, offensive coordinator for the Lions, who's going to be one of the most sought-after coaching candidates this offseason, I think that was a little bit of a show-off to the Bears because, hey, Chicago, heard you're looking for a new coach. Look at this. Y'all have a really young, talented quarterback who, by the way, in this game, 2 touchdowns, 300 yards, no turnovers, and a passer rating over 100. Look what I could do with him. Just saying, I'd be an awful good fit. I think that was kind of I don't know how wise it was to do it. With Jared, for those who didn't see it, Jared Goff, there was a play action between he and Gibbs, and both Goff and Gibbs stumbled as if the ball had been out, as if there was a fumble, and then Goff threw a touchdown pass. I think it was to Laporta? I think it was to Laporta, Sam Laporta, the excellent tight end. And I would have saved it for the playoffs for a more opportune time, but for Ben Johnson, he's like, hey, I'm looking out for my long-term prospects. You got to do what you got to do. But good win for the Lions, maintaining first place by the skin of their teeth right now over the Vikings. Speaking of Minnesota, I'll say this. I am as close as ever to admitting I was wrong about Sam Darnold just being a system quarterback. I'm close. That throw he made to Justin Jefferson in the fourth quarter against the Seattle Seahawks, under pressure off one leg, off his off leg, down the field to, we know Justin Jefferson's the best receiver in the game. That was awesome. And for the record, speaking of not being a system quarterback, you know what? Sam Darnold's been great in the fourth quarter. He's got a pass rating over 100. I believe this is what the numbers show in the fourth quarter. 3 touchdowns, no turnovers against a good Seahawks defense. Pass rating of 112. Listen, obviously the Vikings are a contender. We've known that for a while. And I've said for the last couple of weeks, people are like, oh, you got the dilemma. Do you pay him? McCarthy, you drafted him. J.J. McCarthy out of Michigan. My thing is, I don't know, you got a pretty good guy now. Sign him to the Baker Mayfield deal. Who said you're in a rush to play J.J. McCarthy? It's the greatest problem ever to have. If Sam Darnold thistles out, okay, we go to McCarthy. But the Baker Mayfield deal, about 3 years, 100. My guess is Darnold's going to look for 4 years. Don't blame him whatsoever for doing that. Minnesota's got to keep Darnold. My guess is they'll franchise tag him. Hate the franchise tag, but that's probably what they're going to do. And see if they get a long-term deal worked out. But, yeah. I was high on Darnold coming out of USC. I sold stock after the Jets and Carolina. Then he was Brock Purdy's backup last year, and I'm like, I don't know. Hey, listen. Niners might have let the best quarterback in that room last year go. Just saying. Because I saw the 49ers yesterday. And Brock Purdy, again, fourth quarter, horrendous interception. Second half, you had Debo Samuel turned back the clock. Debo looked great yesterday. And George Kittle was there, and the Niners were a virtual no-show in the second half, particularly Purdy against basically his left-handed equal to Tua Tagovailoa. I don't know. If it were me, I wouldn't give him $60 million. But the Niners they want to do it, knock yourself out. It will literally cripple and handicap and destroy your franchise for the next half decade. But if you feel like Purdy's the man, you give him that. Knock yourself out. It's not like he's completely and totally reliant on Kyle Shanahan and the weapons. And I've said Purdy can move. Purdy's talented. Purdy's got good accuracy. The problem is, though, for Purdy is when the accuracy goes, which he was kind of all over the place in the second half against Miami. When that goes, well, he doesn't have that. He doesn't have playmaking ability. Obviously not like the best guys, like obviously not Mahomes and Josh and Burrow and Lamar. C.J. Stroud can make plays. The Strouds have a down year, but C.J. Stroud's perfectly capable of being a playmaking type quarterback. Justin Herbert is. Dak Prescott is. Okay. Other guys. Jaden Daniels darn sure is. Jalen Hurt. Brock doesn't have that. Pay him $60 million. Knock yourself out, Niners, but that would be a pretty horrible decision if you made it. By the way, speaking of if I were a bet man, I did have a 2-1 week. So again, the Steelers and Russell Wilson really hurt me, but Cincinnati covered 9.5 is a lot of points, but I feel like they were in good position to cover there. New England plus 14 was the play. Buffalo coming off a big win on the road in Detroit at home, divisional game, a little bit of Chiefs syndrome, not taking their opponent that seriously when your opponent's terrible. I'll tell you, by the week, Drake May looks better and better. These rookie quarterbacks, man, Drake May looks good. Jaden Daniels looks excellent. People think Caleb's played poorly. Caleb's been hasn't thrown a pick in like 2.5 months and has been really efficient. Talk about guys like Bo Nix has been solid in Denver. Penix looked good yesterday. I love Penix. Buffalo took care of business, did what they were supposed to do, and still not going to get the 1 seed, but they're probably going to lock up the 2 seed pretty soon, because I don't think Baltimore and my Steelers are going to run the Bills down for that number 2 seed. Raiders beat the Jaguars. Be completely honest with you, didn't watch a snap. I mean, I don't know. Mac Jones versus Aiden O'Connell, I'm good. But old McCorkle, yikes. And finally, I got to say, and I'm not being facetious when I play the soundbite.
How about them Cowboys? Yeah!
How about them? I was actually quite impressed with the Cowboys yesterday. I don't know if it was the best thing that could have happened to them, because if for those who don't know, the Cowboys were eliminated from playoff contention due to that loss yesterday against, due to the win by, who was it who eliminated them? Washington beating Philly, eliminated Dallas from playoff contention. But facing a red-hot Bucs team with a red-hot quarterback, Baker Mayfield, who had kind of an uneven game, had a turnover. Then Rachaad White, there was the play. Deron Bland made a great play, just taking the ball out of Rachaad White's hands. But Cooper Rush, solid outing from him. A touchdown, pass rating of 108. Cowboys ran the football really effectively. The Cowboys didn't run the, not my bad, not the Cowboys. I was thinking about somebody else. The Bucs ran the ball effectively. The Cowboys, though, were able to weather that storm. But CeeDee Lamb was CeeDee Lamb. He's phenomenal. Cooper Rush was efficient, no turnovers. And it does tell me that, listen, I don't know if bringing Matt McCarthy is the greatest option for the Cowboys, but I've always said about McCarthy, like, he's not as good as some of his few supporters say he is, and he's not as bad as his detractors say he is. He's a solid coach. Kind of middle of the road, but he's a solid coach. And it does show that even despite the Cowboys losing Dak a month ago, being out of playoff contention, they're still fighting like crazy. And that says a lot about a coach. Like, you can lose games. If you lose the locker room, you're done. Go and fire the coach. He's done. McCarthy's not only lost the locker room's playing their arse off for him. So that says a lot about McCarthy. I give him a lot of credit for that on the Cowboys for doing their thing. All right, let's get to Bryson's best 10, then we'll take a break because we're going to do a naughty and nice list in sports. Let's go and get the background music going on right now. Bryson's best 10. In that. We will start at number 10, the 10th best team in the National Football League. Folks, I can't quit them. The Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers are the 10th best team in the National Football League, and here is why. By the way, Chargers back in after a couple-week absence. Listen, that win against Denver was impressive. Listen, you say, they gave up 27, kind of a down defensive performance, but Jim Harbaugh, by the way, against another great coach in Sean Payton, outflanked Payton with knowing an old school rule, getting the field goal at the end of the half. Justin Herbert and the offense kind of rides that momentum in the third and fourth quarters. Ladd McConkey apparently is an essential part to this offense. He's been excellent. The Chargers, classic Jim Harbaugh, running the football effectively. Listen, they're not a Super Bowl contender. My bold prediction before the year was that they'd be in the AFC title game, but I certainly thought they'd be a playoff team. And listen, if you're the Steelers or Ravens, you're not looking forward to playing the Chargers in the first round against Justin Herbert and Jim Harbaugh. It's a well-coached team. It's a well-quarterbacked team. The Chargers are the 10th best team in the National Football League. The team they share a stadium with is at number 9. At number 9 is staying where they were at last week. It is the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams are the 9th best team in the National Football League, and here is why. Listen, ugly win yesterday against a bad Jets team, but Stafford makes the plays when he needs to in the second half. Sean McVay is a top 5 coach in my view. Kyron Williams has been running like a madman as of late. He's been excellent the last few weeks for the Los Angeles Rams. By the way, a Rams team that is on fire, is going to win the NFC West, and is going to be terrifying for a team, or 2 or 3 maybe, if they were to go on a deep run in the playoffs. They could face a Green Bay. That's a tough matchup. The Packers, you'll see where I've got them on Bryce's best 10. But I don't know. When you have an elite quarterback at Stafford, elite coach in McVay, listen, if there's one thing that could get the Rams beat in the playoffs, it's just the youth and inexperience they have on the defensive side of the ball. Last year, it was red zone struggles. I'm not as worried about that now with the development of Puka Nacua. Tyler Higbee is back, which is huge for this offense. They're playing their best ball for the second straight year at the right time. Watch out for the Rams. They are the 9th best team in the National Football League. At number 8, dropping a couple spots, it's my beloved Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers, my Steelers, are the 8th best team in the National Football League, and here is why. So, look, what can I say? I mean, no George Pickens the last couple weeks is the only reason they didn't fall to like 9 or 10. Because if Pickens played and they still did this offensively, I'd be just in full-blown panic mode. Listen, we know who Russell Wilson is. He's effective when playing with a run game, when the defense is showing up against the elite quarterbacks of this league. But if you're asking Russell to carry you, he just can't do it anymore. That's just not who he is. But at the same time, TJ Watt's been quiet the last couple weeks. expect him to at least make some noise on Wednesday, on Christmas Day against the Kansas City Chiefs. They're going to need him. The Steelers are, in order to make it happen. Mike Tomlin's going to have this team ready to go each and every week. Listen, it wasn't a pure domination. The score would say 34-17. The Ravens beat up the Steelers. That was a tie game in the second half and then Russell Wilson throws the pick at being down 7 in the fourth quarter. It was a brutal turn of events for Pittsburgh, but Russell's been the best QB the Steelers have had in years. The defense is still elite. I'm not selling stock on TJ Watt of all people or Mike Tomlin. Get George Pickens back. Get the offense right. The Steelers, still in the top 10, are the 8th best team in the National Football League. The team that beat them last week moves up a spot in this list. They're at number 7. It is the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens are the 7th best team in the National Football League, and here is why. Look, the defense has played really well the last few weeks. They're giving up somewhere around like 15 points a game. Lamar Jackson, listen, just strictly by the numbers, Lamar's the MVP. 40 touchdowns, 4 picks. Are you kidding me? The guy's throwing the football as well as he ever has in his career. We know what he does with his legs. His pick to Minkah Fitzpatrick was the only one of those 4 where it's like, oh, that was a bad play by Lamar. The other 3 were like, yeah, either the receiver made a mistake or the defense just made a great play. But listen, having Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews has been awesome as of late. Derrick Henry's just a man amongst boys each and every week. Is a handful to game plan for. Listen, the only reason I'm not a little bit higher is because I still don't really trust this team from a consistency standpoint. Are they going to be a Lamar team this week? Are they going to be a Derrick Henry team this week? Is Justin Tucker going to make his kicks? Is the defense going to show up? The defense is playing better as of late, so maybe that is sustainable. And I don't love them in the fourth quarter of close games, but they're still really talented. They don't control their fate for the division, but the Pittsburgh Steelers, schedule from here on out is much tougher than theirs. The Ravens, with Lamar Jackson, are the 7th best team in the National Football League. At number 6, dropping 3 spots from last week. Again, some of it is just what the teams behind them did, more so than what they didn't do. But at number 6, it is the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles are the 6th best team in the National Football League, and here is why. Listen, the loss of Jalen Hurts obviously pegs them down on this list, giving up 36 to Washington. We know Jaden Daniels is special. That kid has more than proved himself as a franchise quarterback in year 1 for the Commanders, but still blowing the lead, second half. The Devontae Smith drop was brutal. That said, it's still a loaded roster. Hurts should be back, if not for this week, for the last week, and certainly for the postseason. Worst case scenario, this team's going to be the 2 seed and have a good position to go on a playoff run. But listen, you'll see what I talk about with the teams behind them. I just think they have more layers. I certainly trust their coaching staffs better. And so that's kind of the situation we're dealing with Philly. But Saquon's still amazing. As long as they get Jalen back, they'll be fine. If it's Kenny Pickett from here on out, take it from a Steelers fan, Eagles are cooked. But if they get Jalen Hurts back, they'll be fine. Eagles defense had a bad day at the offense. It gets an elite offense that they were facing. They'll be fine. Eagles fell a little bit, more so because of what the teams behind them did, but they are still excellent. The 6th best team in the National Football League. At number 5, it is the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings are the 5th best team in the National Football League, and here is why. So, like I talked about and sort of touched on briefly, I am, like I said, as close as ever to buying stock. Late, I admit that. I get that. Late, but buying stock into Sam Darnold. I'm awful close to it because when you talk about what this guy has done, what his clutch factor in the fourth quarter has been nothing short of remarkable. You talk about the fact that this defense is still one of the best in the league. Brian Flores has done an incredible job with this Vikings defense. If that man ain't a head coach next year, I'll be shocked. The guy's done an amazing job. He's earned the right to a second chance after some of his struggles, with Tua and whatnot. But Kevin O'Connell is a Coach of the Year finalist without question. The guy's been nothing short of outstanding. And by the way, I keep hearing like the Vikings are overachieving. I keep hearing like the roster isn't great. I don't know. I think it's at least offensively. You got the best receiver in the game, Justin Jefferson. You got TJ Hawkinson. Aaron Jones isn't what he once was, but he's still productive. You got Jordan Addison, who's like the second best number 2 receiver in the league, in my estimation, to Devontae Smith. And then defensively, maybe you're not stacked, but Brian Flores has kind of done an unreal job on that defense. So I think this is an unbelievable team Great roster. They finally have a playmaking ability from the quarterback position. Watch the heck out for the Minnesota Vikings. They are the 5th best team in the National Football League. Staying in the division in the NFC North. By the way, they're going to play this team this week. What a game that'll be. At number 4, moving up one spot from last week, it is the Green Bay Packers. The Packers are the 4th best team in the National Football League, and here is why. You know, whoops, there's the Minnesota graphic. Hang on. For Green Bay, look, we know what Jordan Love did in the second half of last year. He's doing it again. Not turn the football over, playing efficient football, is playing a brand that is conducive to what the Packers want to be, and that is a hit you in the mouth, power run team. Josh Jacobs, there's a meme that's been going around that my sister, who's a diehard Packers fan, loves. Hit a you-know-what in the mouth. That's what Josh Jacobs is. By the way, this defense has been playing better as of late. We know McKinney has done an amazing job, maybe a Defensive Player of the Year finalist. Matt LaFleur potentially as a Coach of the Year finals. I still can't quite get over what he did with Malik Willis this season. That's some of the best coaching I've seen in the last decade in the NFL. And then you pair him up with the quarterback as talented as Love. Now you got something really special. Look, the Packers aren't going to win the NFC North. No shame in that. It's the best division that we've seen in years in the NFL. Boy, I tell you what, you do not, if you're a division winner, if you're the Rams, if you're Atlanta, man, you don't want to run into Green Bay in the first round of the playoffs because they are scary. The Packers are the 4th best team in the National Football League, and staying in the division in the NFC North, I think the best team in the NFC currently is the Detroit Lions. The Lions are the 3rd best team in the National Football League, and here is why. But before we say why, once again, Dan Campbell, what'd y'all do again?
Kneecap.
Did it again to the Chicago Bears, 34-17. The offense was potent. The run game was excellent. The O-line's amazing. Goff was efficient. The defense stepped up again. It's Chicago, which at this point seems to be like a broken operation outside of Caleb Williams. Listen, you talk about, again, we're going to hit you in the mouth, but we're also going to be creative. Ben Johnson, we saw the trick play, I think really to impress his future employer, the Chicago Bears. I think that was very intentional on his part, but I love what they bring to the table. I love the physicality. There's nothing really that I don't like about this team. I will say Campbell scares the bejesus out of me in the playoffs on some of these 4th down calls. I'm usually for them. I'm still a little bit traumatized from the one against Green Bay. It worked, but man, you do not do that in that spot. It scares me. Man, those guys play hard for Dan Campbell. The Lions are the 3rd best team in the National Football League. At number 2, falling a spot from last week, it is the Buffalo Bills. The Bills are the 2nd best team in the National Football League, and here is why. So, listen, they had a bad day at the office. I should say a bad day. A down day at the office. That was to be expected. I think Patriots plus 14 was always the play. It was one of my if I were a bet man games. Defense showed up slow. That's really my concern why they fall a little bit. It's just I'm not seeing it right now at all from this Buffalo Bills defense. Sean McDermott has been a good coach throughout his time in Buffalo and prior to Buffalo. I don't know if it's a personnel problem. My guess is that's kind of what it is. They've dealt with injuries. Offensively, Josh Allen is spectacular. We know this. James Cook is leading the NFL in touchdown runs. They've got the weapons, Amari Cooper, Keon Coleman, Dalton Kincaid, etc. I really like this Bills team. I've said all year it's the most well-rounded Bills team. Great O-line and play caller as well. But most well-rounded Bills team, or certainly Bills offense at the very least, that Josh Allen's ever had. I feel like I can see in the future right now the Bills losing 34-31 in the playoffs to like a Kansas City, for example, just because they couldn't get a stop when they needed to. Josh is going to do his thing. And again, he had an off day. He threw a bad interception in the end zone. We get that. Josh has had great playoff moments. I don't think that's going to change. The Bills are the 2nd best team in the National Football League. And back at number 1, you can argue in the rightful place, the back-to-back world champion, Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs are the best team in the National Football League. And here's why. I don't know. They're 14-1, best record, best quarterback, best coach, top 5 defense, best close game team, best 3rd down team, excellent situationally. And oh, by the way, they're about to get the number 1 seed yet again. So they're going to have a week off, and the road to the Super Bowl is going to run through Arrowhead Stadium. Listen, I kept hearing all season long, about what's wrong with this Kansas City team. You know what I know is that they beat playoff teams. Can we show you their record, which is the best in the NFL? Great graphic here by Alfred. Kansas City's graphic, the best record in the NFL against current playoff teams. They're 6-1 in such games. Lions are 5-1, and then the Eagles and my Steelers are tied at 5-2 in terms of record against current playoff teams. They beat good teams. They win close games. They're efficient. Don't turn the ball over. They make plays in the clutch. And by the way, they just so happen to have won the last 2 Super Bowls and have the best record. Listen, if you don't like the Chiefs, got it. Understood. At least acknowledge that they're pretty awesome. The Chiefs are, once again, the best team in the National Football League. Before I look at the comments, let's go and put up the top 10. From 1 to 10, at number 10, it is the Los Angeles Chargers. Number 9, the Los Angeles Rams. Number 8, my Pittsburgh Steelers. Number 7, the Baltimore Ravens. Number 6, the Philadelphia Eagles. Number 5, the Minnesota Vikings. Number 4, you're welcome, Chloe, the Green Bay Packers. Number 3, the Detroit Lions. Number 2, the Buffalo Bills. And at number 1, the Kansas City Chiefs. James Diggins is in the comments. What's up, James? I'm a Ravens fan. I can see a Lions-Ravens Super Bowl. So I certainly see the Lions. They were my preseason pick. I think they're the best team in the NFC without question. I'll tell you this, James. If Lamar was more consistent in the playoffs, and frankly, it's not even just a Lamar concern. I don't know what Ravens teams like. Now, maybe coming off the bye, that's what they needed. They're playing, again, much better defensively. Like Marlon Humphrey, the pick 6 on Russ is still like living rent-free in my mind right now. But they're getting to the quarterback. The secondary has been better. If the last few weeks we've seen for the Ravens, if that's the team we see in the playoffs, and certainly we need Lamar to show up in the playoffs, okay, yeah, they can absolutely make a run. But we've seen enough data and evidence to say, I don't know if I trust them. Like, they'll win a playoff game, I think. They'll be better than whoever they play, be it Houston, Denver, Chargers. Man, I'm concerned. I got to say, unfortunately, we're going to have to cut the show short today. We'll release the segments just due to a scheduling issue. We'll do the show or do the segments as relates to the naughty and nice list, predictions, all that. But that is it for this week's, for today's episode of Carving Up Live. We'll see you guys on Thursday, not Wednesday, man. We're not doing a show on Christmas, but on Thursday, a lot of football talk, basketball and whatnot at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time, right here on Facebook, as well as the Carving It Up YouTube channel and the Grid Network YouTube channel. Be sure to like, share, comment, and please hit that big red subscribe button. Helps the channel grow exponentially. Just as importantly, be sure to go subscribe to the Grid Network. That is GRYD, the Grid Podcast Network, any and everywhere that you get your favorite podcast. I'm running up against the clock right now. We'll see you on Thursday. Stay safe out there. Have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy Holidays wherever you are. We'll see you then. Stay safe out there. God bless y'all. Peace out. By the way, solid moves by the Red Sox this offseason. I got to give it up to them. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.